How we teach our kids history has become a big controversy these days, with liberals accusing conservatives of wanting to whitewash the past, and sometimes that's true. Sometimes they do. But plenty of liberals also want to abuse history to control the present. It was a tough week for America. I mean, it started out good. I'm sure you all heard that Taylor Swift won the Super Bowl.
History is supposed to be the one place we can all agree on, because unlike politics, sports debates, or the last Taylor Swift album review, history has receipts, coins, birth records, ancient shopping lists that literally say how much grain some Mesopotamian ate. But in 2025, apparently even history is up for correction, courtesy of the woke mob. Portland Public Schools just unveiled a curriculum that claims the very idea of gender being binary was brought here by white colonizers.
Portland Public Schools has a plan now to teach kids that the idea of gender being mainly binary was brought here by white colonizers. The curriculum guide says, when the United States was colonized by white settlers, their views around gender were forced upon the people already living here. Not even Star Trek would try that story. It's also true that much of history is indisputably factual, because we have artifacts and coins and birth records and archaeology, and somebody in Mesopotamia kept a record of how much grain they ate. It's not all up in the air to change or delete or make up based on what makes you feel better today.
According to their guide, settlers arrived, unloaded their muskets, and also dropped off gender roles. Not even Star Trek would try that plot. And trust me, Star Trek has done episodes about space lizards falling in love with holograms. So buckle up, because Bill Maher has had enough. He's taking a sledgehammer to woke history revision, and the takedown is as brutal as it is hilarious.
History books? That's not supposed to be fan fiction. How we teach our kids history has become a big controversy these days, with liberals accusing conservatives of wanting to whitewash the past, and sometimes that's true. Sometimes they do. But plenty of liberals also want to abuse history to control the present. And last month, a scholar named James Sweet caught hell for calling them out for doing just that. He criticized a phenomenon known as presentism, which means judging everyone in the past by the standards of the present. It's the belief that people who lived 100 or 500 or 1,000 years ago really should have known better.
The fight over history isn't just about dusty textbooks anymore. It's front and center in America's culture wars. Walk into almost any school board meeting these days, and you'll see parents, teachers, and activists clashing over what kids should be taught about slavery, gender, race, and America's founding. On one side, conservatives are accused of trying to whitewash history, painting over the ugly scars of racism and oppression. And sometimes, let's be honest, that criticism lands. There have been real attempts to soften or sanitize America's past in order to create a cleaner, more patriotic version of history. But here's the twist. Liberals are guilty of their own brand of distortion too. Instead of downplaying the past, they try to weaponize it. They inject today's moral debates into centuries-old events and demand that historical figures meet modern-day standards. This approach has a name: presentism. Now, presentism sounds academic, like something you'd read in a dusty grad school thesis. But Maher boiled it down in a way anyone can understand.
Which is so stupid. It's like getting mad at yourself for not knowing what you know now when you were 10. Stupid me, spending all that time raising sea monkeys and playing with slot cards and jerking off to a Playboy in the barn. Who doesn't have moments from your past that make you cringe? Who hasn't said, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I wore that. I can't believe I thought that. I can't believe I did that. You ate dirt. You wanted to be a Ghostbuster. You shoplifted gum. You tried to be a white breakdancer.
It's basically judging everyone in the past as if they were living on Twitter in 2025. It's the idea that George Washington should have had a DEI consultant, or that Shakespeare should have been checking his pronouns before writing Macbeth. And that's where Maher drew blood. Because who among us hasn't done dumb stuff in the past that makes us cringe today?
Presentism. Yeah, this professor is right. It's just a way to congratulate yourself about being better than George Washington because you have a gay friend and he didn't. But
he rattled off examples we can all relate to. Eating dirt as a kid, shoplifting gum, trying to be a breakdancer, or, my personal favorite, thinking cargo shorts were the height of fashion. The point? We all have embarrassing chapters in our own history. Does that mean we were irredeemable people? Of course not. It means we grew, learned, and moved on. But the woke movement doesn't allow history that grace. They act like every figure from the past was supposed to have perfect foresight, as if Abraham Lincoln should have been tweeting number Black Lives Matter, or Joan of Arc should have had a TikTok channel explaining gender fluidity. Here's the irony. The people most obsessed with rewriting the past are the same ones who parade around as if they've never made a mistake. According to them, they've always been on the right side of history. They've never said the wrong thing, never held a flawed belief, never made a decision they'd regret. They've achieved a kind of moral perfection, at least in their own eyes, which makes them feel qualified to sit in judgment not only of you, but of everyone who ever lived. And Maher's punchline hit like a brick. Being woke is basically like stepping into a moral time machine where you always win. You get to sit comfortably in your air-conditioned house, scrolling on Wi-Fi, asking ChatGPT to confirm your brilliance, and then dunk on people who lived 500 years ago. It's the easiest victory lap in the world, because the people you're mocking aren't alive to defend themselves. That's why this debate is bigger than just one curriculum in Portland. It's not about whether schools should acknowledge slavery or sexism. Those things should be taught. It's about whether history itself becomes a tool for activism, rewritten and bent until it looks less like fact and more like fan fiction. And that's the part that Maher and millions of people quietly watching from the sidelines are no longer willing to accept. This is where Bill Maher really went for the jugular, because nothing exposes the fragility of an argument faster than hypocrisy. The woke crowd loves to stand on moral pedestals, shouting about America's past sins, especially slavery. Scroll through X or Instagram and it's the same refrain. America was evil. America was built on slavery. But here's the problem. They present slavery as if it were a uniquely American crime, born in 1619 and somehow absent everywhere else. That's just not true. History tells a different story. The Egyptians had slaves, the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, all ran massive slave economies. Africans themselves captured and sold other Africans to European traders. Slavery wasn't an American invention. It was a global reality, a brutal fact of human civilization stretching across thousands of years. Maher's point landed hard. If you're going to condemn America forever, then you'd have to condemn every civilization that ever existed. But the woke outrage machine doesn't do that. Instead, it weaponizes America's past selectively, as if guilt is a currency that can only be cashed in here and now. And that's the hypocrisy Maher skewered. These same activists who declare America irredeemable will turn around and excuse or even support groups far more radical and violent in the present day. They'll vilify Jefferson and Washington for their sins in the 1700s, but conveniently look away when modern regimes, from the Middle East to Asia, commit atrocities right now, in 2025. Why? Because holding the past accountable is safe. George Washington isn't around to argue back. Jefferson isn't trending on TikTok. But Hamas? Qatar? China? That's messy, inconvenient, and politically risky. So the outrage disappears. Maher cut through the double standard with comedy. Slavery didn't stop at America. It went all the way up to, yes, even R. Kelly. The laugh was there, but so was the sting. His point was simple. Cruelty is a human trait, not a white one, not an American one. And that's the bitter truth the woke mob doesn't want to face. Their brand of morality isn't about consistency, it's about performance. They're not rewriting history to make it accurate. They're rewriting it to make themselves look righteous. Because once morality becomes selective, once truth is edited to fit an agenda, what you're left with isn't history at all. It's propaganda. And that's exactly what Maher was warning against.
People talk about slavery these days, you'd think it was a uniquely American thing that we invented in 1619. But slavery throughout history has been the rule, not the exception. The Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Greeks, Romans, the Arabs, British, the early Americans, all the way up through R. Kelly.
Take London's recent play, I, Joan. Written by Charlie Josephine, who identifies as non-binary, the play reimagines Joan of Arc, one of the most iconic figures in history, as non-binary, using they-them pronouns. Yes, the 15th century peasant girl who rallied armies against English invaders is now written like a character from Euphoria. Maher's reaction was blistering. He pointed out the absurdity. Joan of Arc lived in a world where language itself didn't even allow for they-them pronouns. French, to this day, assigns gender to every noun. Joan wasn't executed by the fashion police for wearing pants. She wasn't ranting about identity in court transcripts. She was tried for heresy, accused of witchcraft, and eventually burned at the stake, all for leading soldiers into battle against a foreign army. But the woke version of Joan reduces her story to pronouns, missing the actual power of her legacy. Joan wasn't some identity politics pioneer. She was a teenager who strapped on armor, picked up a sword, and dared to fight against the greatest military power of her time. At 17, she didn't hide behind hashtags or slogans. She took the fight directly to the enemy. And that's what makes this kind of revisionism so insulting. By rewriting Joan as non-binary, you strip away what made her extraordinary: her faith, her courage, and her defiance in the face of certain death. You don't need to reinvent her. You don't need to force a modern narrative onto her. Her story already inspires on its own. Maher mocked the idea perfectly. Not even Star Trek would try that story, where they land on a planet and give everyone separate bathrooms. The joke stung because it was true. The woke attempt to retrofit history doesn't just bend facts, it cheapens the very heroes they claim to celebrate. And here's the bigger issue. When America exports this brand of cultural revisionism to Europe, it doesn't land the same way. Europe isn't a blank slate. Its nations are older, more layered, with centuries of tradition and identity baked into their history. Trying to force America's latest ideological experiments onto places like France or Britain is like trying to make an oak tree act like a pine. It just won't bend. That's why plays like I, Joan don't inspire universal applause. They spark backlash. Because deep down, people still recognize that history isn't supposed to be a canvas for today's political movements. It's supposed to be a record of what actually happened. Joan of Arc didn't see herself as a symbol. She saw herself as a soldier. And reducing her to a pronoun misses the entire point of her fight.
I, Joan, currently being presented in London, written by Charlie Josephine, who identifies as non-binary and uses they-them pronouns. And it portrays Joan of Arc as, surprise, non-binary with they-them pronouns. Which, if you think about it, makes even less sense because Joan, being French, spoke a language where every noun is masculine or feminine. Joan says in the play, "I'm not a girl, I don't fit that word," as if she's a character on Euphoria.
So, what Maher reminded us, and what we should all take away, is that history isn't here to make us feel comfortable. It's here to teach us. The past isn't a blank slate we can rewrite. It's a foundation we can learn from. And if we lose sight of that, if we let ideology distort truth, then we risk raising a generation that knows slogans instead of facts, and outrage instead of context. That's not progress. That's regression disguised as virtue. At the end of the day, protecting history is about protecting truth. And truth is the one thing we can't afford to lose. Thank you for watching. If you found this video thought-provoking, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think history is being rewritten, or is this just part of how societies evolve? Drop your comments below, and let's get the conversation going. I'm glad you joined me today, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.